out. But to your point, in case some people might not know that, the U.S. has a number of free trade agreements, but around the world, many countries have many, many more than the United States. Many, many more. So I've got to believe somebody has figured this out, and if they haven't, maybe you should do it.
Well, I just think this, if we can't politically get trade agreements done, because of the Pew data we saw at WITA a while ago was interesting too, about, the Republican Party is the one that's been carrying these votes, but so there's more protectionist sector in the Republican Party, and they approve of these trade agreements at a lower rate than Democrats who aren't voting for them. So if we can't get these trade agreements done, then what is the impact when the rest of the world is negotiating without us? And I just am having a hard time finding that. So, I can't do that research, but I would encourage you guys to.
No, it is a good question, and it's a good point. One of the examples I like to give is not exactly on point, but when I was a kid, we got our first color TV, and it cost like $400. And now you'd be almost crazy to have to spend $400 for a color TV. It's free trade has brought so many enormous benefits, and the problem is you can't see that benefit easily. What you can see is the person who loses a job in theory because a factory moves to Mexico or to China. That you see that, you hear about it, it becomes news, but you don't see how we're all empowered in this room by the technology we have in our pockets right now. We're now walking around with computers in our pockets that can do enormous things that couldn't be done, forget 10 years ago, 6 months ago. So anyway, was there another couple of questions? Yes, sir, up here. And we got a double dipper over here who wants to ask a second question.
Thank you. Kevin Subley, Ford Motor Company. I just wanted to go back real quick to the yen issue. I know, Milan, you had mentioned something about the yen value not really affecting the price of vehicles. By our own analysis, and actually Toyota's analysis, because that's the example you used, if you look at their latest annual report, I think it's page 21, they specifically have attributed an $8 billion hit to their profits from currency values. And I know that they export, I don't have the specific numbers for what we import, but I know they export at least 1 million vehicles a year from Japan. So I'm curious how you got to your position. If you could elaborate on that, I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think there are two aspects to it. And the first one is the currency hit, which naturally if you trade and your currency is appreciates, it means that when you bring that money back from US operation and from other countries back to Japan, the value in yen is less. So I think most of that has to do with the fact that they didn't hedge their operation or their funding as much, 100%. And that's the valuation part of it. But I've had meetings in my office where we've had a senior Japanese official, and one of the things that we know and we've gotten to appreciate is the political positions that these corporations in Japan probably pushed to acquire. And one is when they export, they don't necessarily change the prices of the goods, because one, they fear losing market share or acquiring market share. And last year, if you recall, early in the year when the Japanese yen depreciated, we didn't have them lowering the price of the Japanese cars. And so when it appreciated, we didn't see a change in the price. So the volumes themselves remain the same. But in terms of the value changes as the currency itself changes, and that is what's having the FX hit on their P&L.
And I'll just sort of bring this full circle a little bit. You may recall that when I was looking at the list of top airports and seaports around the country, that this little bridge in Laredo, Texas was number 2. The reason that little bridge in Texas and Laredo is number 2 largely is because of the automotive industry. There's so much manufacturing of motor vehicle parts south of the border that are coming to the United States now, and there's so many parts moving from the United States into Mexico now that it's sort of created a Detroit South, if you will, in that area of the country. And I think we have who's got the microphone? Here we go.
Yeah, this question is directly for Ramgam. How would you see the rise of e-commerce affecting your business in particular, and how's it affecting overall U.S. trade?
I would tell you that innovation moves at warp speed, right? If you're not changing technology every 6 months, you're already out of date. I would tell you policy in regards to e-commerce is not moving at light speed to accommodate the innovation. So how it's affecting our business, many of the people in our office spend a lot of time trying to, along with associations and bodies in this room, trying to change global policy on the movement of e-commerce and electronic goods. We think USTR is doing an amazing job in regards to trying to push that threshold to where it needs to go with ITA agreements, environmental goods agreements, TPP. It's more active in the United States than the United States has been in the last 20 years. So I think there's about 21 trade agreements in the US. And the next threshold is really going to be about what we call platform e-commerce. How do you create a democratization of movement of goods through e-commerce platforms that removes global barriers to trade? I think people are going to be working on that for a number of years. And that's what we say, globalization, value chains, supply chains. That's the good part of all that, is you can start a business by having a website, by being international, by being involved in those value and supply chains. So to answer your question, I think I gave kind of an overview. It's not where we need it to be, but our job is to get it where it needs to be.
Yeah, and the number 6 ranked export out of the United States is this thing called low value shipments, which, to be honest with you, in the early years of producing these trade publications, I would just sort of leave it out because it didn't add any value, but it kept increasing and there's very little you can determine about what it actually is. But it's anything valued at less than $2,500 can be just called a low value shipment, and you can't tell much about what it is or where it leaves from, but it's now the number 6 ranked export. My guess is a lot of that is going to be e-commerce type trade.